So I want to talk to you in this video about a really important part of the golf swing which often gets overlooked, and we're going to be using some of your golf swings. We're looking at swings from Perry and Andrew, who both sent some swings in. Now you can see their golf swings on the screen playing at the moment, and both of them have a sort of an out to win delivery. So their club moves from out to win at impact, and I'm guessing that they're going to be hitting fade shots. They might be hitting some slice shots, and they might be sort of missing the target out to the right. By the way, how good does this hole look? This is the 18th hole at the Montgomery at the Max Royale in Turkey. Golf Travel Centre sorted me out for this trip, so thank you to them. But yeah, they're going to definitely be struggling with sort of out to win paths. And there's one reason which is kind of causing that. And we're going to cover what it is. And it's really down to what the golf club is doing relative to their swing and how they're fighting against that. And we're going to change that. Before we sort of go through what that is, I want you to have a look at the top of their golf swings. What do you see as a pattern? Well, relative to where they're trying to hit the golf ball, they both have the club head slightly on the outside of their hands. Now, I would call this a laid off position, where the club head is too far out behind their heels relative to their hands. This we would term sort of a more cross the line. That's kind of my golf swing, but they both have a more laid off position. So when we have that laid off position, there's a couple of things that tend to happen, and you can't stop it. It's a natural force. So to explain what's going to happen, we need to do a little demonstration down on the floor. So there are two ends to the golf club, obviously club head end and grip end, but there's also something called balance point, which is where obviously you can balance the golf club. It's going to be somewhere now down towards the grip end. So the grip of the golf club is going to move in a certain direction. And if the balance point of the golf club is not lined up with that direction, we're going to get a reaction in the golf club. So let's put a straight line on the ground here and put the grip end on that line. If I was to move the grip down that line, you can see how the center of gravity of the golf club isn't on that line. And what happens is, as I pull this grip with a fair bit of force, the center of that golf club, the center of gravity, tries to line up with it. You can see now it's joined that line. So as I start to move the grip in a certain direction, the weight of the club starts to try and line up with that. And you can see that it's done that perfectly. The issue becomes when we start to put a fair bit of force in the grip, what happens is the club lines up with it, but then it doesn't stop, it does this. Now you can see it's gone the other side. Now that wasn't me trying to do that, that was the natural forces being applied to the golf club. So because I moved the grip in a certain direction and the club head wasn't in line with that, it created a reaction in the golf club. Had we been in this position where everything's in a line, it doesn't matter how much force I use, the club head is never being forced in either direction. That's a really important concept, and that plays out in these golf swings that we're looking at. So what we just saw there was that the club head is moving through its kind of natural forces. It's just physics. That's just the way the club reacts to the direction that you're moving in. So when they get to the top, and I'm going to put them in some extreme positions here, they're not this bad, but when the club is laid off, the hands are going to travel somewhere to start down. They're going to be heading sort of roughly down towards the golf ball. Not exactly, but roughly. And the club head isn't on that line. So as they start to move the hands down, and with some speed and some force, the club head starts to move closer to that line, but it doesn't stop when it gets there, it continues out this way. And they can't stop that. It's natural force of the golf club. It doesn't matter how many range balls they hit and how many hours they go to the range, they're fighting against the natural force of the golf swing. The harder they hit it and the longer the club, the more those forces come into effect. And that's why with the driver, there's a very good chance they would struggle more. So how do we fix it? Well, we get the club head more aligned with the hands. How are we going to do that? Well, let's go through some really, really simple exercises. I've got another golf club here. I have just attached this little device to the end. I'm going to give myself a little reference on the ground, and I'm going to place this, and you can use a golf club or a lime stick if you've got it, right behind my golf ball and on my target line. So I want kind of two checkpoints in my golf swing. This is what I'd love Perry and Andrew to do. I need to think about an extension of this line. So yes, it's obviously behind the golf ball, but I need to imagine that line is going sort of endlessly down this way, past where you're viewing this from, all the way back to the tee. And this little device, or this little reference point that I've got here, you could use a tee in the end of the club if you haven't got something like this. I want really this to be referencing that at about halfway back. Now it hasn't got to be exact. Okay, this is what we call kind of swing playing, and there's almost no golfers out there on the planet who are perfectly on plane. Maybe Tiger, kind of early 2000s, was as close as anyone's been. But we're just looking to avoid anything which is mega extreme this way, mega extreme this way. So the first thing would be left arm level with the ground. Can we get this device to point down at the alignment stick? Now, both of these golfers, I think, will get that position pretty spot on. The one they might struggle with is the one at the top. So at the top, they might have that device pointing too much on the outside of this line. They want to feel like this little device points back in line with this, parallel with it. So I'm imagining this line runs all the way down back to the tee, and I'm trying to point this pretty much back in that same direction. And you can see when I do that, it puts the club head more in line with my hands. This would be a laid off position. This laid off position is going to create this steepening club shaft. And vice versa, if we go too far this way and have the device pointing back into the trees over there, that's going to create the opposite. This is my golf swing. If you've ever seen my golf swing, I'm sure you have. Because I have the opposite, I get the opposite reaction. As I start down, the club head falls too far behind me. But that's probably not a bad feeling for these golfers. So what I would do is I'd give them the idea on what is the correct position, which is what we've just gone through, but then I'd actually give them an extreme feeling for that. So we've got this laid off position where it points this side of the camera, and then across the line where it points this side of the camera. That's what I'd have them feel. I'd get them to take a setup and say, right, can you go at the stick and the other side of the camera? At the stick, other side of the camera. And if we can change where that club head is, or basically where the balance point of the club is, relative to their hands, they will get a different reaction in the downswing. And I'd almost guarantee that if these golfers are trying to change their path, I don't know, because they've already sent me their swings, but I guess they are. If I got them to think about where they are at the top, and that was the only thing that I got them to think about, their downswing would change. And I almost guarantee they'd be like, but I wasn't even trying to change my downswing, I was just trying to change the top. That's the point. If we can target the right part of the golf swing, if we can organize things correctly, everything else kind of falls into place. So this would be a great little exercise for anybody who's struggling with swing shape. Let's make sure we're getting these reference points pretty much dialed in, because when you start your downswing, the club can then fall into the right position. And again, you'll see how this little orange device still points at that line if it was extended. On the way through, guess what? It'll be pretty much against that as well. So swing shape is really important because it allows us to control how our club gets delivered into the golf ball, kind of the path. It's really important that we swing the golf club on the right angle relative to the club that you're using and how tall you are. And as soon as you start to veer off that path and you start to get weird and wonderful positions, you're going to get things happening in your golf swing that you don't necessarily want and you can't necessarily control. That's the key thing. These golfers can't control the fact that the club is doing this. It's forces, it's natural, it's the way that the club reacts to the direction that your hands are moving in. So if you can start to train that, you can hopefully start to get some better swing shapes. What would I do in terms of progressing that to a shot? Well, really, really simple. I'd have them do that, reference it, turn it up to the top, check where it's pointing, go through. Now that was only a 6-iron, it was only, I don't know, probably 90 to 100 yards. That's absolutely fine at this stage. We're not looking to hit great golf shots, looking to train new movements. And all we would do really is start to scale it up. Now if I hit a shot, you're going to see my fault, which is the club getting a little bit across that when I get the opposite reaction. So I'm working on trying to move it a little bit closer to where their golf swings are. But Perry, Andrew, if you're watching this, I hope it helps. I tried really hard then not to get it across the line. Actually, it wasn't a bad shot, so maybe I did a slightly better job. But let's get the golf club organised in the backswing. If you get it organised in the backswing, good things can happen in the downswing. Look, if you want to send your swing in, feel free. Send it to chris@chrisryangolf.com. Just make sure in the subject title you put YouTube swing so I know that I'm able to use it in a YouTube video.